Hello, welcome, Stories in Time. I'm Eloise Shuttler, your storyteller for today. I tell you, I've been thinking a lot about my grandmother. She comes up every once in a while. Well, to tell you the truth, she really never leaves. Ellie Hall Kiesler Bear was her name. She was from North Carolina, of course, Mecklenburg County, born in a little place called Mint Hill, North Carolina, moved to Charlotte with her family, around 1899 to escape a dirt-poor farm where they were just about to starve to death, and they came to Charlotte to get a job, her father to get a job. Granny was extremely important in my life. My mother was her oldest child of two. I was the first grandchild. I always thought I was the favorite, but I'll tell you how good she was. My sisters think that too, that they think each one of us thinks that we were her favorites. I spent as much time at her house as I possibly could, and that's why I was so lucky that we only lived a block away. And I could walk over as soon as I was old enough and knew how to look both ways before I crossed a small side street, that I could walk over and be with her any time I wanted to. Have you thought about how our grandchildren feel when they come and they come around us and they watch what we're doing, and how that stays with them the rest of their life? Well, this is an example of that. I'm a fabric artist, and I love to work with old fabrics and put colors together, and I know exactly how I came to love that kind of thing. Why, at noontime, if I was staying with Granny, I'd go back and I'd crawl up on her bed to take a nap, and there was a crazy quilt right on the top, and each color had yellow feather stitching all around it. There'd be turquoise taffeta and magenta satin separated by yellow feather stitching, and then all the other colors, and I'd rub my fingers around those yellow lines until I went to sleep. And you see, I'm still doing that all these years later. All these years later, I'm still doing that when I make my own work. But the thing I remember the most, and that I realized the other day, I wanted to make a cake. And so what do you do today when you want to make a cake? I took a box out of my cabinet. You know, a Betty Crocker was going to come to my rescue. And all I'd have to do is some milk, some eggs, put it in a bowl, mix it up, put it in the stove, and I would have a yellow cake. That's all my grandchildren have ever seen me do. So they've never seen the pageant that I often saw in my grandmother's kitchen, 2308 East 7th Street. It was a fairly large room, and there was a table in the middle of the room. It was white porcelain top table, 4 legs, no cabinetry underneath. You know, and the table on the side of the room, and the stove and the refrigerator on the side, and the sink was underneath the window so that she could look out when she was washing the dishes. When she was washing the dishes, not the dishwasher washing the dishes. Well, Granny would decide to make a cake, and I would pull up a green wooden stool right next to the table and watch her. She'd go into the closet that she called a pantry, and she'd come out with 2 metal tins, one under each arm. The larger one, I knew what it was. It had letters on it I couldn't read, but I knew that the big one was flour. And the smaller one was sugar, granulated sugar. She put those down on the table. She went back into the closet, and she got the baking powder and the salt and a little brown-shaped bottle, almost like a woman, shaped almost like a woman, the vanilla. And she put all that on the table. One more trip to the closet for the big, round blue and white can of Crisco. Crisco. Then after she had all that out with her mixing spoons and everything by the side, she got out of the cabinet a big pottery bowl. It was, as I recall, beige with a green stripe around the top. She was ready now to go to the refrigerator. Now that refrigerator, the light came on when she opened the door. It was fully electrified, but she always called it an ice box. No matter what. She went to the ice box and she took out a round glass bottle of milk that had a cardboard top and a blue bowl with brown eggs in it, and brought that back to the table. Now she was ready. The only thing left to do was she went to the stove and pulled out 2 gray metal baking tins, set them aside for when she would need them. With a big spoon, she dropped in 2 big glops of white, shiny, greasy Crisco. And then she sprinkled on the sugar, and those white granules just fell right down that mountain of white Crisco, sparkling and sprinkling as they came down, and she mixed that together with a spoon. She creamed it together, and as she got it pretty well mixed up, she took up one of the eggs and cracked it on the side of the bowl, split it, and the yellow yolk turned that to a bright, bright lemon yellow as it just slid right in to the mixture. Another egg, maybe 3 if she needed it, and she mixed those all together, creaming and creaming, and then she was ready. She picked up the tin of flour and dumped some into a sifter, and she sifted that on top of that yellow mixture. Picked up the milk, a little more flour, mixing and mixing, a little milk, a little more flour, mixing and mixing, and then she might stop and look around and, uh-oh, she forgot the salt, just a pinch, and she forgot the vanilla. So she would open up that little jar and drop in just about half a teaspoon of vanilla, and the color would change. That dark brown liquid would change that lemony yellow a little bit off. And she'd keep mixing and stirring and mixing and stirring, feeling it, getting the feel of how it felt. And if it needed more flour, she would put that in. And if it needed more milk, she'd drip more milk in until it felt just right. When she knew that it felt right, she picked up her baking tins, dipped her fingers into the Crisco, and rubbed it all around the inside of that pan, greased every bit of the pan, sprinkled in some flour, and shook it so that the inside of that pan was covered with just a white film of white flour. Did that for both of them. And when they were ready, she tipped the bowl, and that beautiful yellow thick liquid just flowed slowly into the baking tins, half in one, half in the other. She tapped it on the table to get out the air bubbles, and now it was ready. She stepped over and opened the oven, which was heated by now, and slipped in those pans, closed it, and then she turned around and she looked at me, and she did exactly what I had been waiting for. Well, I guess you're ready. Oh, I am, Granny, I am. And I reached up to take the bowl and the spoons so that I could lick the bowl. I could run my finger around and taste that delicious raw batter, and I could take the batter off of the spoon. Oh, I got it all over my mouth and my face too, probably, but it was so delicious, and that's what I had been waiting for. Later, she took those pans out of the oven. They had risen. They were a golden brown. and set them on the sink to cool. You see, she taught me something by watching her make that cake. There was no recipe. There was no piece of paper, no box to tell her how much of this or how much of that. She did it all by instinct. She just knew what she had seen her mama do. And she just did it over and over. She taught me to trust, to test myself and to trust my instincts that the cake will rise and it will be delicious. I treasure that memory, and I'm hoping that I'm giving some memories to my grandchildren, and that you are too. What would they be? Could you name them if I ask you and if we were sitting down together? Think about it. If you like stories, I hope you'll come the third Wednesday of the month to Friendship Heights Village Community Center, 7:30. A new storyteller every month, free to you. We have a lot of fun there, and we'd love to have you come and join us. Thank you so much.